So here we are with a brand new episode of EdCast, and we have the wonderful Jay Barber with us, head teacher out of Worcestershire. And yes, Jay, thank you very much for joining us.
Pleasure,
Please introduce
absolute
yourself.
pleasure. Yeah, well, I'm lovely. I'm delighted to be with you today. Jay Barber, head teacher at Woodrush High School. We're a secondary school in Worcestershire, so we're on the borderline between Birmingham, Solihull, and Worcester. So very much almost a coastal school. We call ourselves, and yeah, we're about 1,000 pupils here, just over 1,000. So we serve 11 to 18-year-olds. We have a sixth form. We also have a library on site and a youth centre, a thriving youth centre that we offer to our community. And we also have a training consortium as well. So we've trained over about 120 prospective teachers, which is really great. So we do lots around teacher training as well. So yeah, that's Woodrush.
Great. So Jay, we've read about you, we've heard you, we've read your excerpts in books as well. And we know that you come from, you, as you've said in your, different excerpts, that you were an adopted child. And then, of course, the whole education journey, and now, of course, being a head teacher.
Yeah.
Would you like to tell us about your personal journey and the motivations behind the professional success, and how did you reach those? If you can just walk us through the whole.
Yeah, of course. I never planned to be a teacher. When I was 16, I wanted to be a graphic designer. When I was 17, I wanted to be an architect. Realised I tried maths A level and I was terrible. So I realised you need a little bit of mathematics to a high level to be an architect. But I always quite liked design. Always been quite artistic. And I went on to, after, I was also interested in language as well. So very much the arts I was interested in. And kind of creativity. And I went on to university to study politics and some sociology as well at Sheffield University. And I think that was because my interest in power and people and how people interact. And then at the time, my girlfriend, at the time when I was 21, 22, was doing I was waiting for her to finish her final year of university study. I started working in a hospital as a healthcare support worker. So my mum was a senior nurse as well, so I worked in a chemotherapy ward, a respiratory ward. And I think to go from having that combination of creative and interesting creativity, for me to have had an academic path, which was about language, and then for me to have had life experience working at the real sharp end of, or the end of life, I think what that's given me is quite an interesting combination of life experience quite quickly, which is great. So I kind of stumbled because my girlfriend at the time was doing primary school teacher training. I was trying to apply for jobs to go and work in international development. Didn't get the jobs. It was very competitive in the United Nations and British Council. It was very hard to get a job. So I decided to apply for citizenship education training. So I became a teacher of citizenship education. I was really lucky to work in a school in North Birmingham, around Castle Bromwich area, that taught citizenship. So I became a specialist citizenship teacher, taught A-level politics, and then went on my journey within a school really, just acquiring things like student voice and healthy schools and really trying to get involved in how I could increase students' involvement in their education. And that led to small leadership projects and becoming an assistant head, and after working in 3 different schools, here I am.
So basically the whole of the professional journeys, yes, you did not want to become a teacher, probably you didn't have that in your radar, but don't you think the whole of this that you've been doing from health to trying to get into international development, so you know, and of course then moving into education, somewhere inside, do you see you kind of had your purpose, but you did not know what the purpose is?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. I think there's a driving force. And maybe, you made the point, Misbah, about my adoption. There's definitely something that was left wanting in my identity, which meant that I learned quite quickly to adapt. Again, I was adopted into a white family, but of course I'm perceived as I was perceived as a black boy. So for example, when I was at primary school, in a predominantly white primary school, when we did performances like the nativity. The school was really trying to be inclusive by making it a youth club and go and get knocked up, for want of a better phrase, with an 18-year-old who I've never met my dad. But for her to be thinking that I was probably going to be damaged, probably going to be wanting something, probably going to be, pretty broken, it was quite interesting for her to realise that that's not the case, which then really broke her, because then she felt ashamed.
Because now you're in the giving instead of receiving.
Which was really emotional for the family, because they felt shame. I think they really wanted me to either be a drug addict or to have a criminal record.
Actually, no, they didn't want. That's
Well,
what
you know what I
they were
mean?
expecting.
They were ready for that.
Yeah,
They were
because
bracing
that's how
for
it is, right?
a broken kid to come back.
You should be very proud.
Yeah, but it's weird though, because it goes back to my adopted parents, because they also suffered loads of racism as well, because they're a white couple pushing a black baby. So they were like, I got called all sorts of things. And it was really obvious they couldn't have a kid, because they've got black kids. So for them, they had their own stigma, because my mum was clearly unable to have children, and yet they're pushing, my sister was a lot paler than me. So about your colour, my sister is, so my older sister, she's more like a caramel skin. And then the social services said, well, if you've got a child who is she's half Mauritian, my sister is. So they kind of thought, well, if you've got one child who's coloured, do you want another one, as they called us back in the day, who's darker? It was me. And then I've got my younger brother who's adopted as well, but he was taken because of abuse within the family. So he was taken out from Dublin. It's
You've done actually very well after all of this, so bravo.
Yeah, it's not. But I don't think it's me. I think it's circumstantial. Like I'm just so grateful, because I stayed with my birth family. I don't know.
You see your purpose now?
Well, yeah, it's funny, isn't it?
Okay, so Jay, coming back to the head teachership side, I want to ask in terms of the challenges. Obviously, in today's landscape in the UK, we have the living cost crisis. We have had the austerity. We now have kind of like the new things the government wants to add to the curriculum. British values is something that we've talked about. So they keep on adding new things that they want the school to do without taking the old ones, except taking the funds away. As it seems in councils, neighbouring with Birmingham City Council. So in terms of challenges that, as a head teacher, you believe what it was in, let's say, 10 years ago versus now, are there any sort of how have the challenges changed, and are there any things which are better compared to what it was 10 years ago?
Yeah, so it's a really good question, and quite a soaring question, really. I think education is changing quite considerably. I think academisation, for example, the fact that we've moved away from local authorities and now schools can do things there's a lot of self-determination, which is great in one respect, but also it's given a real diversity of experience in schools. So I think one of the benefits of local authorities, pretty much most schools would be quite similar, following the same national curriculum. Teachers could move and mobilise quite easily. I think now there's a lot more around schools offering something unique to their context. So parents are in a really difficult position, because if there's a school that's a little bit out of catchment, it's going to be really sporty because they're investing heavily in sport. There's a lot more movement, I think, of parents wanting to be in catchments for spaces that they think are best for their children. And I know parents as well who are thinking that they'd like one child to go to one school because it's sportier, and they'd like another child to go to another school because they do loads with the arts. And that's causing, I think, for parents a real anxiety around placement and place. So waiting lists, like here at Woodrush, we have very long waiting lists because parents like what we're doing here. And I think that's changed. I think a lot more parents, again, I have a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old now and a 7-year-old. And I think it's made me realise, as I'm going through that journey as a parent, you do start to realise how there's so much conversation between parents about what's good about the schools they're at, and also how they can influence the school. And that's quite interesting. It's becoming a lot more democratised with your stakeholders. So what you need to be, one of the challenges I would argue as a head teacher is, whereas back in the day before pre-academisation, you'd have local authority structures which set the educational agenda. Now that is being said at MAT level, at single academy trust level, and with that comes a massive exposure. So I think for head teachers, one of the challenges is the level of exposure now. You get it wrong, it will be on social media. Get it right, it might not be on social media. But get it wrong, it will. And I think that is something which is causing maybe one of the reasons why it's quite difficult to recruit heads at the moment to stick around, because that you've got to be quite ready for that, and to be really mindful of stakeholders. But my answer to that is, to me, it can only be a good thing that parents and pupils have more of a stake and more of a share in the destination of a school.
Yeah.
And leaders need to be open to adapt to that to meet the needs of their local context.
Okay, and on that note, there is a group and that believes that not joining a trust brings more benefits for the schools and then for the pupils, in the sense that there's less bureaucracy involved, they're their own boss, they have a direct relationship with the school rather than being part of a group that cares about various different places. So there's that side also that some head teachers would want to be a maintained school, not join a trust.
Sure.
And like you said, there are benefits of joining a trust. But so which side? And so whilst we appreciate the pros and cons, but overall, do you believe in today's climate where austerity, cuts, and more demands, as you said yourself, from parents and governors, would you say that a trust overall probably is better off for the school and the pupils in sort of the average context that
Yeah. Again, it's a really good question. I think head teachers and and trust boards, and I think sometimes trusts or the boards are often forgotten. One thing I have here at the school is a really close connection and tie with the trust, the board. And so what that means is they're really, really supporting myself and the leadership team that are with me on the direction of travel. And I think by having that triangulation is absolutely critical. And so I think that the benefits of being a single academy trust is, again, we get to determine what we want to change and how we want to change. But one thing we have and we benefit from is having the links through our training consortium. And if it wasn't for us having those links with the universities and with the schools, there was a real danger of you being an island. And you could flourish on an island, but you could also become quite barren as an island. You do need to be able to take and bring back and collaborate. So I think collaboration is absolutely core, central in today's education and kind of landscape. So one thing, we are a single academy trust. We work very closely with several secondary schools. We're working really closely with a group of primary schools, and we're learning so much about transition, and we're learning so much about strategies for ADHD and strategies for SEND
because of
collaboration.
Okay.
So there's a real danger otherwise. You're reinventing the wheel all the time, and that takes a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there is, no matter which one you are in, maintained still or single academy or multi-academy trust, I think collaboration is absolutely crucial, if nothing else for efficiencies.
So when part of a council, are those opportunities to collaborate less, or are they just sort of hidden as compared to when you join a trust?
Well, in trust, it's full exposure. So you become, as a head teacher, you're an accounting officer. So you are, a lot of your time is going to be spent on the business side of school because you are the CEO, the accounting officer, and the head teacher. And people forget there are three roles that you embody. Yeah. Whereas in a multi-maintained school, you are the head teacher, and your accounts are supported at maintained level. So, and then in a MAT, again, a lot of those elements, the accounting and the CEO, is taken away from you. So I think one thing that's different about being a single academy is that you've got all those three kind of accountability levels, strands. But again, that can also bring real opportunities as well. But again, burdens that you have to build into your week. I don't know whether that answers your question.
It does. And yes, so the two groups remain, by the way, but what you've said sort of tilts towards more benefit side, and I guess that's kind of like you're probably more in that group than the other one, in terms of those who argue that.
Yeah,
But I think it depends on context as well.
of course,
Yeah.
absolutely. And again, if you're in a really challenging community context, by being in a maintained school really helps. Because you're rooted within a large collaboration with the team behind you, and that really matters. Whereas if you are in different settings, actually where you can thrive on your own and collaborate through choice, that's great. But collaborate you must in some respects, I personally think.
So, given the collaboration part that you spoke about, and of course, there are collaboration amongst the schools, but then of course, we've also seen how, because of the COVID learning loss, a lot of students, of course, had a lot of loss of learning, were probably behind many other students, and then they did not even have the opportunity to have additional support because tutoring was expensive.
Yes.
Given that scenario, the collaboration with different educational support initiatives, as in, for example, tutoring companies or independent tutors, was this taken as positively by the teachers when this happened? Or not? Because at one point there are some people who think that are we not fulfilling our job properly? Why do they need additional support? Or is it or do they think of it as good for them because they need that support, right? So is it complementing them? So what are your views about it?
Yeah, no, I absolutely think I definitely fall on the second half of that. Of if there was that binary view, I would fall on the side of complementary entirely, because I think some people's learning, we forget that to learn in a class of 24 with varying needs, with limited resources as well for SEN, with children increasingly find it difficult to remain attentive. The challenge of learning in a class, I don't think is out. I think we can forget, and we certainly don't know what it's like to be a child in 2023, and certainly don't know what it's like on the back of what effectively is like a post-war experience for our children. It's the closest I hope that we will ever get to having something which is such a national, global crisis. So I think for all those reasons and more, children have lost the time that others would have had before them to be equipped and have the skills and have the cognitive abilities to retain and maintain focus, let alone then the social skills to do that with others. And then that's assuming you've got a competent, strong, effective class teacher who's also gone through difficulties, and not every day is the same. I think what the wonderful thing about tutoring is that it's not taking anything away. It can help to streamline. It can help to engineer better performance. It can help. We were talking about this before. Before we started this conversation, that it can be holistic as well. That actually, for a child who doesn't get attention in the day, tutoring can provide a quieter, more bespoke, more personalised learning experience. And so, yes, of course, there's standards. Yes, of course, there's targets. Yes, of course, there's interventions. But there's something deeper about when tutoring is done well, it can unleash, like you would in any talented art in the arts. I used to do a lot of swimming, and yes, you would all go and do your basic training, but then your coach would take you out for a conversation and make a commentary about a certain stroke, distance, technique. What tutoring does is that it's an extraction to complement general performance, and in that sense, it's certainly not going to fix the general performance, because that's what schools are for. But what it does do is for those pupils who might need a confidence booster, or they've lost time, or there is a skill that they just can't meet, or there is a cognitive challenge that they have, which means they need some additional targeted support. That to me is the reason why tuition complements what the school delivers to the mass, en masse, and as best as it can. Done really well, I think it can transform the experience for a child. And it doesn't have to be, there's a temptation for it to be at the final lap, that last lap when the finish line is coming up. Done clever, if you do it smartly, if that's even a phrase, but to do it well and effectively, I think you should be thinking as soon as a child lands their feet in your school, is there something you could do then to complement their mainstream learning outside of the hours or before school, or in break times or whenever it is, or again online, something they can do in a time that is good for them and complements their working and school life and home life, I think it can only be a positive thing, and all the way up to A level as well, as we were talking about. That I think again it shouldn't be seen as something that can often fall into an end of year 11 intervention with 3 months to go. That's too little, possibly too late, and can cause harm
confusion
if it's rushed.
Yeah.
It should be a lot more like the approach I know that you take. It's a lot more working collaboratively and more holistically.
Yeah.
So
yeah. You mentioned two things. One, you said if done well, and you said this 2 times. So if I may ask you on this, so in terms of, so for now, the National Tutor Program is there to subsidize, to allow schools to have this pot of money. The moment it's gone, and this being the final year, the cost then becomes an issue, and the school has to tap into the other pots like pupil premium and other stuff. What do you see as the future on a sustained level in terms of tutoring, where it's expected to create an impact with the school? What would you say is the to be done well part after the National Tutor Program runs away? Do you think it's something that should be done at school premises? Do you think it should be done whereby the school is funding it, but the teacher is engaged with the tutor, with the parent and the student? What's the kind of like the model you'd say in a sort of a sustained long-term level?
Yeah, okay, and again, it's a really challenging question. I think it's like anything. It's, one thing we don't often think about is in schools we think of the curriculum and we spend so much time on the intention of our curriculum, and the design and the architecture, and that's the point where you need to be thinking about tutoring, at the point of the design, not at the point of post-implementation. So after you've taught the lessons, for you to do things after, I think is quite difficult. That's revision classes. That's again to do with catch-up or completing some coursework if they're not finished it. I don't think they necessarily require tutoring. I think when it comes to the actual planning for mathematics, it's trying to know of the children when they arrive, or whichever stage their baseline is, at the beginning of year 9 or beginning of year 5, whatever year it is. I think if you know your children and you know where they're at, it's thinking at that point, right, is it sufficient what we have, or should we do something? Are they going to need additional complementary work? So I think the place where that would come, and we're talking about this as a team here at our school, is that because we have our library and our youth centre, we're really keen to do like a twilight school, and breakfast classes as well, because often it's not so much the knowledge that is a problem, it's sometimes about the children having time to really become much more aware of their learning styles. And I think tutoring also brings that to the fore, about how to revise best.
Study skills, yeah.
How to study best.
Yeah.
And today, let's study X. And next time, right, how are you going to take these skills and apply to history? What could you do? And then that empowers them, so they're not becoming, again, dependent on the tutor, but they're becoming empowered by the tutor to acquire skills. And in a classroom environment, not all the children need those skills. Some of them have already got it in oodles, or some of them have always, they've always had it, or others might need a few to be framed, and some just can't access it because they can't study at home because they've got a crying baby in the bedroom next door, or they're living in a really loud and noisy high-rise flat with so many distractions. There could be so many different factors. So I think the approach that I think or the philosophy around tutoring should be more about acquisition of skills to enable self-learning. And that, to me, is like a seminar at university. You have your main lecture and then a small group seminar. You can learn. I used to love the seminars because you weren't just acquiring and passively learning. You were able to engage in a smaller group where you could really explore things. And I think tutoring, there's an opportunity for that type of thing, and that's what we're really trying to do after school here, and making it more fun. That's the fun as well, is if you can make it fun and engaging and there's a sense of achievement, you really want the child to engage in it. And then the final thing I would say as well is, the experience that most people have is of tutoring, and people don't often think about it, is when they try to learn to drive. That is the time when you're entirely on your own. It's pressured. You're getting in a car. Your performance is being scrutinised exactly by your driving instructor. But what do? Very quickly they put you in the driving seat, and they take it steady. And you might be nervous, and it's very expensive to go to driving lessons. But that sense of achievement as you become more competent is something that it can really change you as a person. And I think tutoring has an opportunity to really empower you to have a life skill for learning, that it's not just about trying to do catch up. It really is about enhancing life skills, and disadvantaged children really deserve that. And so I can see why the National Tutoring Programme is targeted for them, absolutely, because they need to have those additional tutoring so they can accelerate on their own little journey. And so I think that's the attitude and the philosophy that I would take towards tutoring, and that's something really quite special, and it's an opportunity head teachers really can influence.
So, of course, since we almost now towards the end, given the fact that you understand your purpose, and if I were to give, ask you, probably request you to give one advice to anybody out there who wants to do something big, even beyond, even despite the challenges that life's bringing to them. You've already spoken about being ready for headship or not. And I would just want you to just put some light on that too. When you were asked to become the head teacher, were you ready for it? And linking to that, what advice would you want to give to everybody out there?
Yeah, I think that's where I felt ready and excited about it. But again, it's like preparing if anyone's ever been married, or you're planning anything large, like a party or going on a holiday. You can get excited about, the destination, but is it going to be without its bumpy rides, without its fault, without its problems on that big day when you're either packing your bags or you're getting ready for a wedding? It's nerve-wracking. It's some things are going to go wrong. It takes a whole lot of people to get you to that destination, or to get you to wherever your venue for your wedding. There's so many agents within that event. That's one thing that the advice I would give for those people aspiring or thinking of their own journey in education is that there are so many people around you, surrounding you, that you can't do on your own. And also, it's not about us. There's a real danger. There's a perverse there's a perverse kind of angle of thinking this is about us as adults, when actually it is about what's going on in the classrooms. What you get though in my job, which is an absolute privilege, is that you get to influence and to view and to make and refine what is already going on in the classrooms. And in that sense, I see it more as chipping away at something, carving something out that's already been carved by those before me. I just get the chance to get the chisel with some of my colleagues and to chip away at it again, and to forge something from what is already there. And so in that respect, you're not starting from scratch. You're just picking up the tools from the person who's passed them to you. And then of course, when I don't know what to do, and that's often, I've got a team around me. It's how do I empower other people to become really good at crafting what they're so good at. So in that respect, that's my advice, is that if anyone is thinking of going into, again, companies like your own, where it takes a leap of faith to start something, to carve something that is going to have impact. It's knowing it's always going to be bumpy. To do anything of influence and of importance is always going to be challenging, but that's the beauty of it. And in that sense, it means I'm like a learner, like the pupils in my school. So we keep on learning, we keep on refining, and we go back and we look at what we've done well and what we've not done well. And in that respect, we're all truly learning in this educational sector. And so it's something to get excited about. But certainly not something to fear.
So if I were to summarize, then I would say, get excited, keep refining, keep learning. You're going to grow.
Be brave, yeah.
Absolutely.
And yes, be brave.
Absolutely.
Perfect. So that was another episode of EdCast with the wonderful Jay Barber. We'll if you want more information on Jay's school, we'll put in the description, and we'll put more information about Jay, and you guys can find out if you want to know more about the person and the institution. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Bye.
Thank you.